Join us on Happy Looming, where we come together to talk about looms, yarn, and the joy of creating. Hello, this is Christy Hunter.
Hi, and this is JaNae, and today we're going to talk about the pros and cons of monogamous knitting.
JaNae, what is monogamous knitting?
Well, this is something that I just found out about myself, and it was really intriguing to me because I am definitely not a monogamous knitter naturally. And that means that basically you have one project, you start the project, you complete the project before you begin a new project. So you're only doing one thing at a time.
Whoa. Okay. So I don't think I've ever done one thing at a time in any time of my life because, like, I don't know, as a woman and as a mom, I feel like I'm doing 10 things at once all the time.
Always. Yeah.
But what do you think the pros would be? Like, have you heard are the positive things of doing monogamous knitting?
Well, I think for me anyway, and what I've kind of gleaned and what I've heard from people that do it is that it's less of a mess, first of all, because you don't have a bunch of works in progress all over the place, right?
Yeah.
I currently live in that situation where I have tons of works like I have bins full of works in progress and literally scattered all over my house. But doing monogamous knitting, you can literally have a smaller stash of yarn, which I can't even imagine because I have an entire wall full of bins of yarn. And you have, you know that if you start a project, you're going to actually have that thing done. You see something that you want to knit, like let's say you see a really amazing shawl or something and you start knitting it. If you put it away or put it down and you start 10 other things, like, are you ever going to have that shawl? And so one of the pros is that you're going to actually put all of your knitting energy into that one project until it's done. And then you will enjoy the end result a lot sooner than if you start 10 other things in between.
Oh, okay. So this would really help me in the fact that I often make one sock or one glove, and the pair never gets made.
Never happens.
It's like, oh, well, I made one and I'm good. And then I move on to a different thing. So if I was doing that, I'd be like, oh, I've got to finish both of these gloves before I can move on to something else. Okay. Right. I can see where that would be beneficial. I think another thing is, my husband's always picking up various looms in various parts of the house with various projects on them, which drives him crazy, right? It's like, why do you have a blanket here and a hat here? Can you just like consolidate?
Right.
So I think it would be beneficial for my marriage.
Yeah. Marital bliss is another pro.
There you go. There is a pro. There is a pro for this idea of monogamous knitting or loom knitting or crocheting, right? Crafting, monogamous crafting.
Just crafting in general. Exactly.
Yeah.
This is something that I've never been able to do though, ever. It's just not in my nature. And, so I'm like you. I have things all over the house. And my coffee table in the front room basically is like a workstation, and it holds probably 3 or 4 projects that I'm working on in the moment. And then my hobby room is just full of other things that I've like pushed to the side, like, okay, well, I'm not working on that. And I needed to make space on the coffee table. Right. So it's just kind of become this like horrible circular thing that I'm doing that is just, and I have all of these ideas that I want to try out, and because I'm trying to create new things all the time. And so I'll start something like, oh, I've got this idea. I need to get it on needles or on a loom really fast. And then I'll get that going, and then I need to do something else. And so I'll put that away. And then I go back to it. It's like, what was I doing? Like, what is this thing right here? What is this supposed to be? Yes. So a lot of and I don't want to take it apart because what if I remember and so it's like you also fall into this trap of, I have all of these things that I was in the middle of, but I don't even remember what they were.
And trying to then complete it when you've forgotten
it becomes
even
impossible.
What pattern you were using, or if you're making it up as you go, which I often do. I'm just like, this is what I feel like doing. And then you go back and you're like, what was I working on?
That's 99% of my projects are things that I'm making up. And so it's like, I don't have a pattern to go back to and say, oh, this is where I left off. It's like, I don't know what I was doing here.
Okay. So as you've heard about this from other knitters and loomers, do you think, I think it would be kind of difficult to like go from the chaos. It's kind of like, that lady who that has you clean out your house and hold things and be like, this makes me feel happy. So I'm going to keep it. And this does not make me go. So I read that book and it was fantastic. I can't even remember the name of it, so I can't even give it a plug, but it was really a good book. And my husband and I decided, we're going to do this. And we cleaned out our closets and our whole house, and we it has you like fold your clothes a certain way in like rainbow. And so,
really?
Oh yeah. And you like everything in your drawers is like put in by color. It's beautiful when you do it. It lasted, I think, maybe a week and a half, maybe. Yeah. And then I decided this only works for people who have no children and live in very small apartments in my life. Yeah. So because it's a beautiful concept, but I couldn't implement it long term. It was this idea that everything has its place and you don't bring in extra things. And if you buy something,
it's just not realistic for a lot of people.
And I was like, oh man. And so then I kind of felt like a failure. I was like, well, I just failed at minimizing my life. And then I just realized, it's okay. Like I can take these concepts and like maybe adapt it so it does fit me.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I've done with the monogamous knitting idea, because it is completely unrealistic for me as a person. First of all, because I'm just not made that way. My brain doesn't work that way. I have to explore my creativity when it hits, right? And so if I'm monogamously knitting something and I put myself in that box and I've got this other idea that's nagging my mind, I really need to go do that other idea before I can finish anything else, because it will just swirl around in my brain constantly. And so for me, I have to take this idea, which I really like the idea and a lot of the pros about monogamous knitting, but tweak them so that it works in my life and the way I work, so that I can take all of the good things about it and apply them and kind of maybe help myself to get more organized in the way that works better for my workflow. Workflow.
Yes.
The mouth didn't want to say that.
That's okay.
But so what I decided to do is, instead of having, 1,000 other projects, is to make one basket. And it's like this little basket that I have. It has little handles on it. It's really cute. I got it from a craft store, and so it's adorable. And I can easily carry that to whatever room I'm working in. And, it has my projects in it. So I gave myself the leeway to say, okay, JaNae, you can have as many projects as you want, as long as they fit in this basket.
Ooh, I might need a really large basket.
Yeah. Well, with an S-Loom, you need a really big basket.
Maybe I have to say that I have to be able to carry the basket.
Right.
Like it can't be like on wheels, like a shopping cart.
Right? I was just going to say, or something that you could push on the floor.
It's like, this is my bin.
This is my monogamous basket.
Okay. So I'm liking this idea though of having maybe something like having a basket, or I like the idea of allowing myself a number of projects for me. Like maybe I'm allowed 3 projects, like one blanket, because I'm always like to be working on a blanket, because that's what I like to do when I'm watching movies and when I just have periods of time where I can just sit for a while. And I don't usually take blankets with me because the looms are too big and I don't want to transport them. But then, so that could be like one project. And then a small project that can go with me in the car, like glove or sock or washcloth, like that could be one project. And then maybe a like project that's like, I'm just testing stuff, like a tester project. Cause sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to test new stitches, or I want to test making this. So I might frog it like 15 times, but if my brain's being creative and I want to just be trying things, I think having that be a separate project that might be something that could work. So explain this basket to me that you have and how you're implementing that or trying to implement it.
Okay. So what I do is, in the basket, I have to have everything that I need for the project. So it has to be all of the yarn that will go into the project, any notes or patterns, the looms, the hooks, anything that I need to make that project has to be able to fit into the basket as well, which also limits the space of the number of projects that can be in there. And then anything that's in the basket, I have to have a recollection method for. So if it's something that I'm coming up with, I have to have notes on it. If I'm in the middle of a pattern, I have to have the pattern with it. And so I'll do that with like little baggies or whatever, kind of like keeping everything together.
That's a good idea. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you safety pin the baggie to the yarn, or do you just or elastic it, or do you just lay them on top of each other?
Actually, I use huge Ziploc bags, and I can just reuse them over and over. So I just take the big Ziploc and I put all the yarn inside and everything. Sometimes the loom or the current project won't fit in there, but all the notions, all the notes, the pattern, everything will kind of fit inside. And if I limit myself to only things that are inside there, it's pretty easy for me to figure out which basket or which bag goes with which loom or project.
That makes sense.
So that is what I do. And so if I have an idea and my basket's full, I will just make a note of the idea and I'll be like, okay, that will get to go in to the basket as soon as all of these other things or there's room, right? I don't have to wait to have everything done before I can bring in something new. I just have to make sure there's room. So that will force me to either get rid of something that's in there already or finish something that's in there.
Right. So you could decide to start a new project and go, you know what, I'm not really enjoying this one, and frog it and just put that away and add something. So that's one option. Or actually completing a project, which is even better.
That's the goal, is to get to the completion part of the project.
And you always feel so accomplished, right? When you actually take something off the loom and it's done.
And it's finished.
Yeah. And you can either use it yourself or give it as a gift or give it to charity. It's like, I completed this, and just that warmth of oh my goodness, I succeeded at making this, and I put love in it and I put time into it and I created it. I think that's so fulfilling that that's a great goal to have, because it's so easy, especially for me with as many projects as I start, to only finish one thing every couple months, where I think if I was implementing this, maybe I could finish something more
several
often.
Things every month.
I don't know. It's just mind blowing. It's wow, what would it be like to finish something every week, or and how would that make me feel more accomplished, so I would do more? Right.
It's motivating. Because you're like, I'm getting things done now. And that's how I feel. And I think I've talked to you about this before, but sometimes I'll need just a mindless project that I can just sit and knit it and not have to think about what I'm doing. But it's something that kind of eases my mind, that's always kind of spinning in these creative ways. So that for me is dishcloths. And I have so many dishcloths, I don't know what to do with them. I give away tons of them and I still have more than I need. So this basket actually keeps me from just, okay, I need to knit something that I don't have to really think about, because it's oh, I can finish this set of gloves. I don't really have to think about it because the pattern's done and I just need to make them. So it kind of focuses what I'm doing a little more clearly too. And it kind of gives me that, what do I want to sit down and knit? That you have those moments where I don't know what I want to make, and you can just look in your basket and pick something.
And it focuses that creative energy
exactly
towards something instead of just kind of mindlessly going, oh, well, I'll just start something new.
Right.
And yeah, that makes sense. I want some of your dishcloth patterns. That's awesome that you make. I've only made one dishcloth and it was really boring. It was just a garter stitch dishcloth. I'm like,
I have so many dishcloths and I like to do different ones and I like to do some that are the same. And yeah, I have so many.
That's fantastic.
It's crazy.
Well, they're so useful, right? You can use them.
I use them every day.
Do you use cotton yarn?
I use cotton. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
I use cotton and it is one of my favorite things to make. This could turn into a dishcloth podcast so fast if we start talking about this.
We better talk about dishcloths later. Let's do that at a later time. We'll put a pin in that.
Yes, that is probably my obsession and one thing that really motivated me to even learn how to knit in the first place.
That's funny because I did not know that about you.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Okay, we'll put a pin in that for later. So I think that some cons for monogamous, because there are always some cons of monogamous knitting, is the boredom factor. Like sometimes or that feeling of being forced. Ever feel that?
I'm trapped inside of just doing this.
I have to finish these projects.
It becomes like a chore.
Yes.
Like you feel like I have to get this done or it's like homework or whatever. Yes. And it loses its joy, right?
Loses that excitement. So I think a way to help that would be to have like the one option within your basket or within your 4 or 5 projects that you're doing that is like the roving project where it's like, oh, this can be, I can frog it as many times as I want, or I can start over the creativity one. Right. Kind of help with that.
I think you also need to give yourself knitting forgiveness.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I mean, sometimes things are going to happen, right? Like you're not going to keep your drawer looking like a rainbow constantly.
It does.
So you have to forgive yourself.
For those who do that, I am so impressed.
It's amazing, right? It is very impressive, but it takes a certain person to do that. And I think it takes a certain person to really enjoy monogamous knitting. And if you're not that person, you can say, hey, look, I've got my basket full, or I've maxed out my
monogamous basket.
Yeah. Right? Or I've maxed out the number of projects I've allowed myself, but I really want to do this other thing. Mm-hmm. I really want to do it. And I'm going to just try it out. Like, I think that you can, as long as that doesn't turn into like 500 other little things, I think you can just give yourself a little free pass every once in a while, mm-hmm. And especially because I know that sometimes if I just don't feel like knitting any of these things that I'm working on, but I don't want to frog any of them and like quit. Yeah. But I just need something fresh and new. And I just need something that I can kind of just do. And I think that's okay. I really do. But I think it's keeping in mind that you're trying to keep on track with things. And I think once you kind of like get that out of your system a little bit, then it kind of gives you that fresh moment of like, okay, I want to go back and finish this now, And
then I think goals, right? Like one thing that I think you can add with this is like, okay, I have the goal of finishing at least 2 projects that are in my basket in this period of time might be helpful with that, because I know I think that, so I'm a deadline person. Like if I'm making something for a specific project or for a specific client, like somebody wants me to make them something, I for some reason that, and maybe it's from all the years of going to school, right? People give you deadlines for homework to be due and you turn it in on time and then you get your A, right? So I think that sometimes giving myself a deadline saying, okay, I want to have this done by Christmas, or I want to have this done by this time, can help push through that and make it just more enjoy. For me, it's more enjoyable because I like to see the end product done. And that would kind of be my goal to
right. So how do you implement, how do you give yourself a deadline? Because if you don't have an outside force saying you have to get this done by this time, like how do you put a deadline on yourself or something? I think you have to, maybe for me personally, like making sure I write a pattern every month has been really good for me, because otherwise I do get in this mode of like, oh, I want to try this. I want to try this. I want to try. It kind of forces me. No, I have to finish designing this one thing right now. I can't just go off. So that has been really good for me, but that's not a deadline that I've necessarily imposed on myself.
We're so grateful that you do it.
I know, but it's been good for me, right? Because and so here's the thing that me as a person, how would I put that kind of a deadline on myself without having an outside force do it for me? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it would have to be, I think you would have to maybe, I don't know. For me, I would probably be like
a purpose, like whether like,
right.
If there's a hospital that's taking donations, or if you're doing it for a holiday, like I'm making this hat for Christmas, I'm making this for this person's birthday. Like some of those things are like, it gives purpose to the item you're making, as well as gives you a time frame. So I think those
finding like a motivation, like a
motivation of like, this is what I want to finish. Now, it doesn't always work. My sister, Cindy, who is the creator of CinDWood Looms, right? She makes lots and lots and lots of looms, but doesn't have a lot of time for actual loom knitting because she's so busy. So she started an Afghan for my daughter before she was born, and she is now 6. And I think
I know where the story is going.
Had time to finish it. She just hasn't. She's like, she wants to. She gets it out like, once every few months and works on it a few rows, and then she like will show it to cute Alyssa. She's like, "This is your blanket."
This is your
and
baby
I'm like,
blanket.
Yeah, and I'm like, maybe, and it's like a long time joke. I'm like, maybe you'll get it done for her wedding. Or maybe her first child. And
when she
like,
has
I'm
a child.
Get it done before then. Like the last 2 years, she's like, well, now it can be a blanket for her dolls. It's like on the 36-inch S loom. It's like not a huge project.
It isn't a huge project.
But it's just having the time, right? To get it done and to finish it. And so I think that having shorter deadlines and then allotting time each week to the project is, I think, important for me. And saying, okay, because some people just, like, if you work full time, if you have lots of kids that are going everywhere, you can't do it every day. But allotting like on this day, like on Sundays, I spend this month. I want to take this time to loom knit.
This is my knitting time.
Yeah, especially if it's something that's relaxing to you. Like I think it's okay to tell your family, like, this is my loom knitting time. And
it's part of self-care because you have to take care of yourself and do things that you enjoy doing and that give you a sense of purpose and a creative outlet.
And I think
every person needs
that monogamous basket, like you can be like, hey, you know what? I'm working on these 3 projects. And so I'm really trying to get those done this month. And so this is my time that I'm going to work on that. And you can talk to me or we can do things, but right now I'm going to take this 30 minutes or, however long you feel you can give yourself to do that. And I think that would be a pro of having something specific that you're working on, like in this monogamous basket we're talking about, because it gives you a focus of these are the ones I'm going to work on and I'm going to get them done in this time period. And then I'm going to feel accomplished, which then I'm going to make more things because I feel accomplished.
It keeps you on track. And then when you do finish something, if you're like me, you're already looking forward to the next thing that you get to put in the basket, right? Yes. So if you find yourself getting diverted and wanting to like go in other directions and try other things, maybe that's the motivation to give yourself the deadline. So it's like, I want to do this other thing, so I have to finish this really quick, and then I can start this other thing that I'm really excited about.
So if you are a very, 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 very polygamous knitter, you have multiple projects all the time, and you are going to try and implement this idea, whether it's actually just one project or a monogamous basket, which I actually really like. Would you suggest starting with something small, like having a few small projects? Well,
it's interesting because you're talking about Afghans a lot and blankets and things like that. And I've tried to do that. I've knitted only one blanket in my entire life. and it was a baby size blanket. And I keep thinking, I really should make more blankets. But for me, I like to have speedier results. So to have one project that I'm working on for that amount of time, which is why I don't make big projects. I do a lot of smaller accessories because I can get them done quickly. I can see the fruits of my labor and see what I've done, and it's more satisfying to me. So I think it really depends on the type of knitter that you are and the type of projects that you like to do. If you like doing something that's long-term, that's amazing. And I think that, you could have that one big project. And like you were saying, your 30 minutes every Sunday that you sit down and work on it could be dedicated to making this blanket that you will eventually have done. Or, if you're like me and it's like, okay, I kind of need to have something done within, 3 rounds of knitting or I'm going to be upset, right?
Yeah,
I'm going to go a little bit crazy.
It takes too long. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I stick with larger gauges. I struggle with the finer gauges for that same reason, because if I take my half hour, I don't get nearly as far in the project as I do if I'm using the chunkier yarns and the larger gauges. And
exactly.
Even though it's beautiful, the stitches come off so much finer, and there's the detail work you can do on the finer gauges, incredible, but it takes so much longer. I don't have the patience.
Yes. See, that is the same thing for me, but I force myself through them because I love the way they look. So I am exactly the same way. This is why I can't do cross stitch, because it just takes too long and it's just such fine, tedious little work. But I know people who love it and they're amazing at it, and it gives them, it relaxes them. For me, it gives me anxiety. So I totally understand it.
Has to kind of figure out their own of what brings them joy. But I think that's probably what we want to end with, is the idea that by having this monogamous loom knitting or crocheting or crafting basket, that we can become more fulfilled because we're completing projects and we have our energy focused on a few instead of just mayhem everywhere.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Create that organization that will hopefully make us feel that excitement to continue to create more as we complete projects, right?
Right. If you thrive in creative chaos like I do, then you just contain that chaos to one space, like to that basket. That's my creative chaos basket. And I can be as chaotic inside that basket as I want to, but it focuses my creativeness and my energy a little bit better.
And it makes our family members happier.
Yes. But I still feel like I have a lot of creative freedom because I'm not so restricted.
Now, that being said, we still have our craft room with our wall of looms and our bins of yarn. It's just they're more organized and they're not all out all over the house.
Just staying more focused in a smaller...
Just like, okay, this is what I'm actually working on. And then when I am ready to start a new project, I can go to my loom wall or my loom bin, to my yarn and choose my next project. But yes, I like this idea. Okay, well, I am going to try and implement it here in the next, it'll be my 2021 goal of the year.
We'll have to check in every once in a while and see how we're doing. Like what things we're coming up against, like what are the difficulties and what could we, switch off here and there.
Yes. And I would love to hear from our listeners. Like, what do you think about monogamous knitting? Like, is the basket idea a good idea? Do you think we're crazy to even try it? Like, is that just like,
are we just insane to even think about this?
Right? Or is it like, whoa, that is brilliant. I definitely need to try that because my yarn and looms are taking over my entire house and it's got to stop. I'm really curious. I would love to hear feedback. So
me too, especially from people who are not inherently monogamous knitters, because a lot of people just naturally do that.
Really?
So you're not the people we're talking. Tell us why it's good though. Yes! But tell us why it's good. Tell us how you do that, because for me, I'm definitely not that way naturally at all. But I know people that are like that way naturally. Like they can't even imagine.
Or the people that have successfully transitioned from being like crazy chaotic creators to being organized monogamous creators. I would love to hear feedback on tips on how you do that. So please respond and send us information about what you're doing. And we are so grateful to our listeners, and we hope to talk to you again next time. We'll talk to you later. Happy looming.
Happy looming. Bye.